The plane was shaking violently at 30,000 feet. Alarms were screaming. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling, and passengers were crying and praying for their lives. But then something impossible happened. The captain's voice came over the intercom, calm and steady, and he said one name, a 17-year-old boy's name, and he thanked him for saving every single person on board. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. And please like and subscribe for more videos like this. Marcus Chen was not supposed to be on that flight. The 17-year-old had spent his entire summer working double shifts at a grocery store, saving every dollar to visit his grandmother in Seattle. She was sick, and he wanted to see her one more time before college started. His parents could not afford the ticket, so Marcus paid for it himself. He was proud of that. He had never bought anything so expensive with his own money. When he finally boarded Flight 427 on that Tuesday morning, he felt like an adult for the first time in his life. He found his seat in row 23, middle seat, squeezed between a businessman in a grey suit and an elderly woman knitting a purple scarf. Marcus did not mind. He put in his earbuds, closed his eyes, and tried to sleep. The plane took off smoothly. Everything seemed normal. The flight attendants walked down the aisle with their carts, offering drinks and snacks. The businessman typed furiously on his laptop. The elderly woman kept knitting, her needles clicking softly. Marcus ordered a ginger ale and stared out the window at the clouds below. He thought about his grandmother, about the stories she used to tell him when he was little, about how she came to this country with nothing and built a life from scratch. He wanted to tell her that he got into a good college, that he was going to study engineering, that he was going to make her proud, but he never got the chance to think about what he would say next. Because that is when everything went wrong. The plane lurched hard. Marcus's ginger ale spilled all over his lap. The businessman's laptop slid off the tray table and hit the floor. The elderly woman gasped and grabbed the armrest. The seatbelt sign dinged on, and the captain's voice came over the intercom, asking everyone to remain seated. But his voice sounded different, tense, nervous. The plane shook again, this time harder, and people started screaming. The oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling, dangling like yellow snakes. A woman in the front row was sobbing. A man shouted for help. The flight attendants rushed down the aisle, their faces pale, telling everyone to stay calm. But Marcus could see it in their eyes. They were terrified. The plane was diving. Marcus felt his stomach drop as the aircraft tilted forward, nose down, losing altitude fast. The businessman next to him was gripping his seat so hard his knuckles turned white. The elderly woman was praying, her lips moving silently, tears streaming down her face. Marcus grabbed his oxygen mask and pulled it over his face, his hands shaking. His mind was racing. Was this it? Was he going to die at 17, before he even got to see his grandmother? Before he finished high school? Before he did anything with his life? He thought about his parents, about how devastated they would be. He thought about his little sister, who looked up to him like he was a hero. And then he thought about something else. Something strange. Something he had read a few months ago. Marcus was obsessed with planes. He had spent countless hours watching videos about aviation, reading articles about flight mechanics, studying diagrams of cockpit controls. His friends thought it was boring, but Marcus found it fascinating. He dreamed of becoming an aerospace engineer one day, designing planes that were safer, faster, better. And because of that obsession, he knew things. things most passengers did not know, like what certain sounds meant, what certain movements meant. And right now, as the plane shook and rattled and dove toward the earth, Marcus heard something that made his blood run cold. A high-pitched whining sound coming from the left side of the plane. He knew that sound. It was the sound of an engine failing. But it was not just failing. It was surging, revving up and down uncontrollably, like a car stuck in the wrong gear. And that meant something very specific, something very bad. It meant the engine's computer system was malfunctioning, sending the wrong commands to the turbine. And if the pilots did not shut it down manually and fast, the engine could explode. Or worse, it could rip itself off the wing, throwing the plane into an uncontrollable spin. Marcus looked around. Everyone was panicking. The flight attendants were strapped into their seats now, bracing for impact. The businessman was crying. The elderly woman had stopped praying and was just staring straight ahead, her face blank. No one else seemed to understand what was happening. No one else knew. But Marcus did. He unbuckled his seatbelt. The businessman grabbed his arm. "Where are you going?" he shouted. "Sit down." But Marcus ignored him. He pulled off his oxygen mask and stumbled into the aisle, holding on to the seats for balance as the plane lurched and shook. A flight attendant screamed at him to sit down, but he did not listen. He pushed forward, toward the front of the plane, toward the cockpit. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst out of his chest. His legs felt like jelly, but he kept moving. He had to, because if he was right, if the pilots did not know what was happening, if they were trying to restart the engine instead of shutting it down, everyone on this plane was going to die. He reached the cockpit door. It was locked, reinforced after 9/11, impossible to break through. He pounded on it with his fists. "Open up," he shouted. "Please. You have to open the door." Nothing. He pounded again, harder. "I know what is wrong with the engine," he screamed. "You have to shut it down. Please." Still nothing. Marcus felt tears stinging his eyes. He was just a kid. Why would they listen to him? Why would they believe him? But he could not give up. He pounded on the door one more time, as hard as he could, until his knuckles bled. And then, finally, he heard a click. The door opened. A flight attendant stood there, her face white as a sheet, her hands trembling. Behind her, Marcus could see the cockpit, could see the pilots frantically flipping switches and pulling levers, sweat pouring down their faces. "What do you want?" The flight attendant shouted over the alarms. "We are in the middle of an emergency." Marcus pushed past her. "The left engine," he shouted. "You have to shut it down, now." The captain turned round, his eyes wild. "What? Who are you?" "Get out of here, no." Marcus shouted. "Listen to me. The engine computer is malfunctioning. It is sending surge commands to the turbine. If you try to restart it, it is going to explode. You have to cut the fuel and shut it down manually." The captain stared at him. The co-pilot stared at him. For a moment, nobody moved. And then the captain looked at his instruments, looked at the engine readings, and his face went pale. "Oh my God," he whispered. "He is right." The co-pilot's hands flew across the controls. He reached for the fuel cut-off switch, the manual override, the emergency shutdown lever. Come on," he muttered. The plane shook violently, throwing Marcus against the wall. The alarms screamed louder, and then, suddenly, the whining sound stopped. The shaking stopped. The plane leveled out. The alarms went silent. Marcus collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air, his whole body trembling. The captain turned around and stared at him, his eyes wide. "How did you know that?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Marcus could not speak. He just sat there on the floor of the cockpit, shaking, tears streaming down his face. The co-pilot was still working the controls, stabilizing the plane, getting them back on course. The captain knelt down next to Marcus. "Kid," he said softly, "you just saved everyone on this plane. Do you understand that? If you had not come up here, if you had not told us what to do, we would have tried to restart that engine, and we would have blown up in mid-air." Marcus looked up at him. I just knew," he whispered. "I read about it. I study planes. I want to be an engineer." The captain smiled, tears in his own eyes now. "Well, you were going to be one hell of an engineer," he said. He helped Marcus to his feet and led him back to the passenger cabin. The flight attendants were staring. The passengers were staring. Everyone had seen Marcus run to the cockpit. Everyone had heard him shouting. And now, as the captain guided him back to his seat, the entire plane erupted in applause. People were cheering, crying, reaching out to touch Marcus's hand as he walked by. The businessman who had told him to sit down was sobbing, thanking him over and over. The elderly woman grabbed his face and kissed his forehead, whispering blessings in a language Marcus did not understand. He sat down in his seat, still shaking, still unable to process what had just happened. And then the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Asterisk, ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I need to tell you something. A few minutes ago, we experienced a critical engine failure. We were in serious danger. But thanks to the quick thinking and incredible knowledge of one of our passengers, a 17-year-old young man named Marcus Chen, we are all still here. Marcus, if you are listening, thank you. You saved every single life on this plane today." The entire cabin erupted again. People were standing, clapping, shouting Marcus's name. He buried his face in his hands and cried. Not because he was a hero, but because he realized how close they had all come to dying. How fragile life was. How one moment, one decision, one piece of knowledge could mean the difference between life and death. When the plane finally landed in Seattle, emergency vehicles were waiting on the runway. News crews were there too. Someone had radioed ahead, told them what happened. Marcus walked off the plane in a daze, still not quite believing any of it was real. His grandmother was waiting for him at the gate. She was in a wheelchair, wrapped in blankets, too sick to stand. But when she saw him, she reached out her arms, and Marcus ran to her and collapsed into her embrace. She held him tight, stroking his hair, whispering that she was so proud of him. And Marcus realized that this was why he had worked so hard for that ticket. This was why he was on that plane. Not just to see his grandmother, but to be exactly where he needed to be, exactly when he needed to be there. Asterisk, the story made national news. Marcus was invited to talk shows, interviewed by newspapers, praised by aviation experts. The airline gave him free flights for life. The captain wrote him a letter, thanking him again, telling him that he had 30 years of flying experience and he had never seen anything like what Marcus did. But Marcus did not care about any of that. He just wanted to go home, hug his parents, play video games with his little sister, and get ready for college. Because he had learned something that day, something more important than anything he had read in a book or watched in a video. He learned that knowledge was not just power, it was responsibility. And sometimes, in the most unexpected moments, that knowledge could save lives. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this.